Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back after the break. I hope that you have managed to discuss all of the interesting topics and you are ready for what's coming. We'll talk about the resilience and digitization in transport. In the context of climate change, the war in Ukraine, extreme atmospheric events, all of that puts a lot of pressure on the development of a resilient infrastructure. That's the subject on the next panel. Digitalization and innovation for a more resilient infrastructure. Artur Olejniczak from the Polish Logistics School will moderate this panel. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, welcome in Łódź. My name is Andrzej Olejniczak, Artur Olejniczak from Poznań. I'm from Poznań School of Logistics. I've been responsible for logistics for over 20 years now. For me, logistics is my life. But logistics without infrastructure would not exist. The panel was well described. Yes, we have to operate in very much non-linear circumstances. The question is, how are we going to build a resilient and robust and innovative system of transport? Our guests, panelists, are as follows. Please applaud the panelists. They may be as stressed as myself in this role. It's a big pleasure and honor for me. Stanisław Bukowiec, a Minister and Secretary of State in the Department of Infrastructure. Yang Tae Kim, Secretary General of ITF. Matthias Rutte, European Coordinator of ERTMS. Chairman of PKP Cargo. Mr. Alan Beroux, Madame Perrine Lavelle, Head of European Branch Voies Navigables de France, Maciej Fabianowicz, Director, i na koniec, and at the end, Agata Wiśniewska-Mazur, New Mobility Association. I do it as well as possible. We are going to discuss everything in Polish. So if you need to listen to translation, please use your headsets. Are we ready?
Are you ready? Okay, thank you very much.
As you may know, considering that it's a meeting of experts, in the European market, Polish people have a preference for transport. This is our big pride, and a big part of our economy. We have a Minister of Infrastructure here, of Transport. Decarbonization and digitalization, what influence does it have on our transport sector, on the public transport from our perspective? Hello, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. To start with, I would like to say that decarbonization should be aimed at transport sector by promoting low emissions in transport or zero emissions. And public transport contributes to that. In my perspective, it is the best path, the best way of achieving decarbonization. For this reason, within the National Recovery Plan, we have included means of transportation that have zero emissions. 579 buses, out of which the majority will be zero emissions. 300 out of 579. We are going to seek support from the Socio-Economic Fund. We want the metropolitan areas to be able to use this kind of vehicles. And we have allocated means, financial resources to buy 88 tramways. We are aiming at mitigating transport exclusion. We're working on legislative changes in order to improve public transport services. Within the existing development fund for bus transportation, our national budget is going to spend over 1 billion zlotys. These financial resources will support bus connections. We notice a need for certain changes in this area, legal changes. We want certain changes in the legislation related to this, especially to increase the local governments and the role of them as coordinators when it comes to the management of connectivity in their region. At the level, this would be more of a bottom-up approach, a preparation, drawing certain plans, designing. So we would like to see more decentralization in terms of fighting and mitigating the problem of transport exclusion. We also would like to work more on rail transport to complete our bus transport system. There are many train lines that are not justified economically speaking, at least currently. So we would like to work on certain lines that would improve the whole system and draw resources for that from national budget. What would be the challenges? Data-related transport, using it and machine reading of them. We have already undertaken certain actions in order to be able to share digital databases of bus stops and train stops in order to digitalize timetables. There is a pan-European model of sharing information, data about multimodal travels. With regard to that, we are also working on appropriate access to data. International cooperation for digitalization. International Forum of Transport is working on EKMT system. Our ministry is also involved in these works. The Minister of Labor is involved, and other Polish entities that started to test those systems already last year. In January 2026, we would like to activate a platform for electronic permits, EKMT. for international transport. We want to implement an integrated electronic European ticketing system. Works related to that have already started. It has already been partly implemented when it comes to rail transport. We are still discussing that in order to make it more coherent. And we hope that in the nearest future, the carriers of rail transport in Poland will announce the good news very soon, and it's going to make the life of travelers much easier. Search engine for offers of different carriers and different means of transportation is another point. Integrated electronic ticket will help a lot. It is easiest implemented in the rail context, but we would like to have bus connections there as well. Autonomous vehicles. There are autonomic vehicles and projects that constitute a challenge. In general terms, like the information that I've been sharing with you can serve as an inspiration for you about how transport can be developed, decarbonized, digitalized. I hope that exchange of information with our foreign guests will also serve as an inspiration. Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. I see around 40 pages of notes in front of Mr. Minister, so we could spend 2 days discussing that material. But a lot can be discussed during your informal meetings as well. I would like to ask Mr. Secretary Yang Tae Kim to share his observations, how to link the two priorities, decarbonization and digitalization, in order to achieve sustainable and a good transport system. How can the member states support that and get ready for future challenges? You have 7 to 8 minutes, if possible.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Okay. So basically, we have to say that digitalization and decarbonizations are not separate topics. And usually we take it a bit different because in the government sector, there are different ministries, so covering different topics. So we are living in a silo, and we always say we have to go beyond the silo. But in fact, if we think about the notion of sustainability today, it doesn't mean necessarily environmental aspect. It means also economic aspect and road safety aspect and inclusive aspect and many others. So the notion is evolving to a much broader the notions, and very simply thinking that digitalization can really contribute to the decarbonization in our daily life. For example, optimization. So with the digital platform, we can make a really productive route planning and asset sharing, and we can use also MaaS, so mobility as a service. So with this platform, we can reduce our time and energy to the bypassing or stopping by, making a long detour, and that will really reduce the CO2 emissions. And also, secondly, I would like to focus on intermodality. And even though we have a very good metro system in one city, in the end, we still have some problems of last mile connection. So from your residence, we have to get to the public transport system. But unless we create a very smooth intermodal system in our urban areas, basically it can still create some difficulties. So ITF as a platform for dealing with all modes of transport, we have a very strong capacity to link different modes of transport, even including active mobilities like cycling and walking. And we can try to combine almost of the transport system. And also digital, the communication system that we use, like to have a conference on Zoom or Teams, and that can really reduce the number of travels. So, for example, okay, it's our freedom to travel for leisure as a tourist. We cannot really say this is bad. It's good, but at least for professional motives, if we can do more video conference rather than traveling ourselves, and that can really reduce the CO2 emissions. So last time I went to Baku, I also met a lot of participants from around the world, and suddenly I thought that, okay, how these people came to this city? And they all flew from somewhere, generating a lot more CO2s, but we are all discussing how to transform our ambition to action, how to reduce the CO2. Maybe we are creating some contradictions in our thinking and in our approach. So I imagine that one day we could create a virtual COP meeting, and then we don't need to travel, and maybe it means that we can reduce the CO2. So it's an imaginary, hypothesis, but still it can be possible. And also the final element that I would like to stress is that these days we talk a lot about AI in the mobility sectors. Yeah, we don't know what will bring, positive or negative. Still, there are a lot of controversies, but definitely we are going in that direction. So AI can bring us a lot more comfortable elements, but at the same time, a lot of threats and perhaps some scary situations. But in ITF, with the 69 member countries, we try to share best practices, and that's what international organizations should do. And definitely the countries like Poland, the leader of European Union, can bring us a lot of good ideas and insights so that we can share on this platform, and also other member countries of Europe. I was impressed by the ministers' conversation this morning, and I think we can learn from each other. So at the upcoming summit that will take place in Leipzig from 21st to 23rd this May, and we will also organize one ministerial session on decarbonizing transport, and then definitely we will discuss this issue with the ministers' participation.
Bardzo dziękuję. Fantastyczna perspektywa. Cieszę się, panie sekretarzu, że użył pan słowa optymalizacja.
It's a great perspective. I'm glad to hear the word optimization because it's extremely important and deserves a closer look. Online meetings mentioned by you. Donald Trump also used this kind of communication instead of taking a plane to be present during his meetings. So that's a good change. Mr. Matthias Rute, a question to you. Harmonization of rail in Europe, interoperability and efficiency of rail transport, digitalization of rail becomes a necessity, a must, in order to respond to the changes in the market. How these systems are going to be developed in the upcoming years, and how is it going to translate into the achievement on transport goal and development of the rail system? 7 minutes, please, if possible.
Thank you very much, and it's a great pleasure for me to be here in the wonderful city of Łódź. I first of all want to kick off by saying, to a certain extent, when we discuss decarbonization, we tend to focus on the culprits and not on the good pupils. The good pupils are rail, because they are already largely decarbonized, and because of that they contribute very little to the global warming. But when we talk in transport terms, we then concentrate on electric cars, trucks, that type of thing, alternative fuels, whether it's in maritime or in aviation. And so I'm just pleading the cause of rail, which is a kind of the poor kid on the block. Now, rail has other problems. Rail has other problems, and you were mentioning, Arthur, that we have to move ahead in terms of digitalization. We, some 20 years ago, developed the idea of having a European Rail Traffic Management System, ERTMS. I don't like the abbreviation, by the way. We should be talking about digital rail in reality. That would be much, much better. So we developed that 20 years ago, and we went horribly wrong. And I think we can learn a little bit also for the other modes of transport from that. We went horribly wrong because we actually only pushed the idea of interoperability. And at the same time, we're saying to all member states, you can continue to have your own national system as long as you guarantee the interoperability. And you do that by implementing ERTMS, and you do it in parallel. And this was a huge and costly mistake. And we're paying a price for that now. But we are moving now from the vision of having ERTMS as an overlay system to a vision of having it as the single European system. And at the moment, I'm looking at the so-called national implementation plans from the different member states, which actually tell us a little bit on how the planning is on ERTMS, and some are very good. If I can mention Poland, because Poland is planning something like 4,000 kilometers in terms of ERTMS in the next years on that. There are some member states which are moving towards ERTMS only lines. I will not list them all, but there's a number of them which are moving ahead. And so I think we have a breakthrough at the moment, but we have a lot of specific issues to look at, and I think we can learn from ERTMS also for other modes of transport. So for one, the major issue is cross-border. Unfortunately, we have implemented different ERTMS systems in different member states, which means that, and I think our Czech colleagues can sing a song about that at the moment, that means that locomotives, although equipped, cannot run cross-border. So we need some much more coordination on that. The second big issue that we have to address at the moment is onboard. Very often we have infrastructure managers who implement ERTMS, and then suddenly they wake up and say, oh God, we forgot about the locomotives, we forgot about the vehicles, and they are not equipped. And since ERTMS is in reality transferring the intelligence from the track inside the cab, suddenly the infrastructure managers have to run systems in parallel because there are not enough locomotives equipped. I think in Poland the planning is something like 1,000. I think 500 are already equipped, another 500 are being equipped, but I think in general terms we would need probably also in Poland something like 3,000 to be equipped. So that's the second point, the onboard. The third one is obviously for ERTMS in general terms, finance. I will not go into that. We've already discussed it and we will continue to discuss it, but obviously there's also a need to mobilize money on that. And then the last point which I would want to make in this context is also, and that's one of the biggest issues, and that's transition management. We are implementing ERTMS not on a green field, that's easy, but on a brown field. And because of that, we need intelligent transition management, especially also for the operators. And one of the big issues that we have at the moment is the move towards the future communication system. FRMCS, it's called Future Radio Mobile Communication System, where we need to develop the standards. We're moving from 2G at the moment, which is antiquated, to 5G, GSMR to FRMCS. And there we need intelligent transition management on that. Having said all that, when we talk about the high-speed rail plan and the interconnections of the cities, the only way it's going to work if we have one single ERTMS system. So just to give you a little bit of a gist, but I'm quite happy also to chip in the discussion on other modes of transport, of lessons learned from the past with the RTMS. So thank you.
Bardzo dziękuję za wskazanie tych wyzwań. Tak,
For pointing out to those challenges, especially integration and operating on existing systems is a major challenge. Recently, one of the banks said that those people who are smart invest in the railways. And let me move on to the president of the management board of the Polish Polskie Koleje Państwowe. Railways are playing a more important role when it comes to sustainability. You have more and more work when it comes to transport. So, what is the role of the railways when it comes to sustainability, zero emissions, and improving the transport overall? Is it possible to increase the role of railways in freight transport, and what are the perspectives for the future? Thank you very much for this question. If we start with the emissions, when it comes to zero emission standard and decarbonization, railways are key. And we should really rely on railways. Ahead of the challenges, if we were to talk about decarbonization, if we were to say that in 35 or in 40 we would like to phase out the combustion engine, one question remains. What can enter the system instead of the combustion engine? What can replace the combustion engine? Having a look at the broad energy consumption, phasing out the combustion engine in Poland itself, if it was to be replaced by, for example, electric engines, would mean transferring additional 220 terawatt hours through the grid, which is 2.5 times more than what we are using right now in Poland. This would mean building new distribution. It would mean installing more power. So just the distribution grid investment would be at 650 billion Polish zloty, which is more or less 200 billion euros. It's only natural that the electric vehicle is not enough. We need to understand that the railways are a natural answer. We have the corridors, we have distribution networks, so we can really manage those flows of passengers, people, and goods. But there is a but. Moving on to the second question. And here I mean freight transport. Freight transport is needed. You can see the global trend. If you see where investment is located by Turkey or by China, you can see that the streams of goods are growing. This middle corridor has seen a fourfold increase in the stream of goods. It may seem natural. Intermodal transport, which is key, container transport, right now is of tremendous importance. But if we have a look at the freight transport market in the European Union, if we see the situation of a sector there is a decline. Not only our Polish PKP cargo has problems, this is the case also of our neighbors. If you take into account the increased price of electric energy, which has risen 2 or 3 times in some of the European countries, you realize that if we have the 30% performance, let's say 30% is the impact of energy on our prices, on our costs. So if we want to achieve zero emission economy or low emission economy, and we keep on investing in the road transport, and I just wanted to remind you that road transport emits 70% of CO2, and railway transport is responsible only for 0.32% of CO2 emissions. So if we meet in 2030 or in 2040, if we want to see the renaissance of railways, that would be a good thing, but we may also see the railways becoming totally obsolete, because what we need to do now is invest. We are in the transition period. We need to prepare so that we can reap benefits in the future. If we think about the railway sector within the European Union, you must see it as a bigger picture. Railway must be designed for 30, 40 years ahead. Even if you think about the rolling stock purchase, quite often locomotives are used for 30 years. So today we need to imagine what we want the transport to be like in 30 years. How do we envisage the flows of passengers and goods? And then we need to create the financing architecture to suit it. Railways, the energy sector, this is something that goes beyond your usual perspective on banking or finance. Buying a car, investing in the road transport will be depreciated in a few years. But here we are talking about designing things for the next 30, 40 or 50 years. The trend is positive. We can see that the passengers want to travel by rail. When I was invited to the Campus Poland of the Future event, and I was sitting with my colleagues from the aviation sector. My colleagues were wondering what they were going to do about the airports, as the young only want to travel by rail. Look at the freight transport. Ukraine is a great case study. Ukraine showed that in the times of crisis, the maritime does not work, the aviation doesn't work, and all of the goods and passengers are carried by the railways. Why is it the case? During the crisis, railways can be easily rebuilt. Of course, if we are talking about the tracks itself, not about the electricity infrastructure, the grid. So, on the one hand, we are talking about decarbonization, electrification, and on the other hand, we need to be thinking about the resilience, security of this infrastructure. So we need to have this two-layer approach. First of all, we need to be building new modern railways. Second of all, we need to bear in mind that in the times of crisis, we must be prepared for switching to the other mode of operation, that is, using the combustion locomotives. And then we would need to use the conventional methods. So we need to be building the reserve capacity in case of crisis, and at the same time we need to be developing the electrified railways of the future. Right now, we need to take a decision on what we would like to have in 30 years' time. But if I were to ask you, just like a citizen, would you invest your money in the railways? Of course I would. Thank you very much. And now let's move to the waterways, inland waterways. We have a representative of a French operator. And a question to you, Perrine. What is the decarbonization strategy of your organization when it comes to inland waterway transport? And how do you see it within the context of the EU policy? And do you use any digitized solutions? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm very pleased to be here in Łódź. So one first point is that the river transport is the only transport mode which is also a natural resource. We have multiple usage, we are multifunctional, so not only transport go on it, but also cities take some tap water, the farmers, they take some water for irrigation, the power plants, they take water for cooling the nuclear system or for producing hydro energy. So we need to think about all these uses when talking about decarbonization and digitalization. And Europe is behind us on this. So one major example is the Senscale project. This is 1,100 kilometers of upgraded, modernized network, and in the middle, a new section of 100 kilometers that is the Canal Seine-Nord-Europe. And will all of this will allow a lot of modal shift from road to river. So that's the first approach. That's the first criteria we have when talking about decarbonization. This is moving the freight from the road to rivers, where the emissions per ton transported is divided by 5. One second. I want to add about the Senscale project that Europe not only brings fundings, up to 1.6 billion euros so far, but it also brings political support with the implementing decision Senesco in 2019, which really made the project enter into a new phase with political support also at the national levels and from the economic sector. So when coming back to decarbonization, so one very key issue is the modal shift, but we need to see it from a systemic approach. So then we have to look also at the emissions of the boats themselves. We can improve the engine efficiency. We can work on the choice of fuels, and there are different types that are possible to the boats. And we can work also on the length of engine uses. So for example, boats are not always navigating. The tourism cargoes, they spend half of the time parked at quays. So during this time, if they can have electricity from the quays and not from their engine and using fuels, that it reduces drastically the emissions just for producing their heat inside and their light. And we also need to improve the infrastructure efficiency, so that's what Senesco is about, but also a different set of projects that we have on the Rhine, on the Moselle River, and in the north of France. And by having upgraded infrastructure, by having modernized telecontrolled infrastructure, it makes the navigation more efficient, and then it increases the capacity and it reduces the emissions. And digital in this frame, it was said before, so I can just confirm it. Digitalization for us, it's optimizing all this work that is made on decarbonization. So and digital is cheaper than investing in the infrastructure itself, so it goes together. So we have a first set which is about water management, but this is really specific to river. And with sensors, with telecontrol, we can manage the river, the water level to avoid drought, to avoid floods that we have more and more at the moment. And this, with this safety, this security that we deliver to the shippers, then it improves also the economic impact of river and waterway transport. Then we work on logistics. So we collect data, we harmonize them, and we upgraded them in the EURIS portal. So now you have a complete European set of the river infrastructure in Europe. If you want to go from Paris to Vienna by boat, then you know all the water depths and the heights under the bridges. We work on the data of boats as well. So now with AIS, we know where are all the boats on real time. And the work we have begun and not finished is about the data about the goods transported. So we have the data about the hazardous goods, so we can follow them. But for the non-hazardous goods, this is still on progress, and we need to find a way that the companies accept to share that data and they don't lose their competitiveness. Finally, I wanted to, you can see how Europe helped us a lot with a visionary approach, supporting approach. So this is definitely a strategic investment that for us, and it must continue with adapted strategic investments adapted to the water challenges. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup. Zmieniam, tak, wielkie brawa. Dobrze się uczycie od...
Thank you very much. Big applause. It's good to learn from people who know how to do it. In Poland, it is not really an existing sector. It would be a dream to implement this kind of transportation in Poland. Let's change the perspective. Intermodal transport, it is very close to my heart. One of the first intermodal terminals in Poland, in Europe, CPK. What's your point of view, Mr. Director? What are the biggest challenges for the intermodal transport? What innovation would that require? What innovative solutions would help to even increase even further the impact of this mode, this branch of transportation? We've heard a lot about the partnership between the public and national entities. Are you going to rely on that still? PPT. Yes, I will build on what has already been said. Good transport, good infrastructure is a driving force for the economy and provides security. A good infrastructure attracts investors. Decarbonized infrastructures gives us a leverage in attractive the most important actors for our economy. Plus the security aspect. Intermodal transport requires, first of all, certain financial efficiency, effectiveness of financing and economic viability. We are not as viable as alternative modes of transport right now. It also has to be infallible, reliable. Digitalization could help here because it would help us to optimize. As a result, we would make a better use of the existing infrastructure. We would avoid waiting times and losing money. Digitalization is not enough. Infrastructure is a must. It needs to be developed. During the previous panel, we have mentioned the necessity to raise private funds as well, and not only public funds. And it is happening. One of the most innovative modern terminal is being constructed near Poznań. We are talking here about investments for many years. The return of this kind of investment is very long. Therefore, public funding is obligatory. Otherwise, unlike the funding that we have is not sufficient. Public funds are a condition for us to be able to raise private money and private financial resources. It could give us, as private investors, the time to carry out the investment and implementations in a smooth way. Talking about the budgets for 2028 and further ahead is a faraway perspective. Yeah, that's the period of time when we would like to already have achieved a lot. We as a group are able to use 60% of the resources allocated to Poland for our investments. My intention is not to show off. I want to explain, illustrate how small the resources are and how big the needs are if we are to implement intermodal transport system. Concerning the security aspect and the partnership between public and private sector. Military can also use our terminal. They are part of a TNT network. They are integrated in the network and they also answer the needs of the military. However, we are unable to build all the infrastructure that is necessary for the military use. We are unable to construct roads that can be used by tanks, for example. Therefore, we need cooperation, public and private partnership. In this aspect, we would need support. Of course, we will participate in the whole process. That would be our perspective. Digitalization reduces the need of traveling because we have Zoom platform and others. As it was said. I disagree a little bit because face-to-face meetings are very valuable. We can meet, we can see each other, we can have informal conversations. This is very valuable. This is a big potential for a better understanding and creation of common projects. I agree with you. Looking into somebody's eyes and signing contracts when you are there is better. However, at the same time, we can cut down on the travels. We don't need to meet face to face every day. Yes, there are things that we can discuss and resolve during online meetings. However, sometimes conferences related to transport, for example, need to be rely on people meeting and understanding each other very well, both from private and from public. Let's move on to another subject, electrifying, electromobility, the last subject for today. A question to Madam Agata. Is there a chance of reducing CO2 emissions in the whole of European Union thanks to electromobility tools? Are they sufficiently performant for the next years?
Thank you very much for your questions. I'm honored to be representing the Polish Association of New Mobility during this very important and much needed event. Roads to decarbonization of transport. There are many. There are many of possible paths. All of them should be effective and take into consideration the public interest. The topic of decarbonization and digitalization is very dear to our hearts. We have been supporting enterprises and local authorities in introducing decarbonization strategies. So we show effective strategies. Our organization brings together 250 different entities, including local governments, like the municipality of Łódź. The first question, I wouldn't ask if, but how. How to do it. And then you asked me whether it is possible to cut emissions union-wide. Of course, you will be having a different conversation about decarbonization in Western Europe, and the situation in Eastern and Central Europe is different as well. Recently, we participated in Brussels in a panel on transport poverty, and even for us, people dealing with the topic on a daily basis, the results of the report were really surprising. There were stark differences between the regions. Let me quote some numbers. Last year, 11 countries of the Eastern Europe were responsible for registrations of 60,000, only 60,000 electric vehicles, which was more or less at 4%, whereas in Western Europe, over 1,400,000 electric vehicles were registered. So, what are the conclusions? 1,500,000 cars were registered in the whole of the European Union, but we have only a few leaders, France, Germany, Scandinavia, and the Netherlands. On the basis of this data, we must be talking about two speeds Europe when it comes to decarbonization and electrification of transport. This might be controversial, nevertheless, the data is what it is. We can see a dynamic development in the west of Europe, but in our region, the pace is not that fast. But what is the reason? Is it about lack of infrastructure, high prices, mentality? Let me continue, and I will tell you what we believe as an association must be done to bridge the gap. Number one, awareness raising. We need to be opening up our societies to absorb new technologies. Then, education on transport emissions. We are not talking enough about it. Nitrogen dioxides are definitely unknown. This is something that we are not talking about, and the source of pollution is very detrimental to the health of our children and to our health. But it is not being talked about enough. And then we need effective incentive mechanisms. Then we need to really tap into our strengths as a region. Poland is the key leader when it comes to electric bus production. There are many electric buses on our roads, for example, here in Łódź. So we have good practices, we have technology, and maybe it's all about switching to cars. This year is going to be the year of breakthrough. We know that we are going to see more and more, let's say, financially accessible offers of electric cars. Awareness raising will be important, but then the automotive companies should be treating us, that is our region, on par with other countries. Basically, this new affordable electric cars must be available also in Poland. But decarbonization is not only connected to the road transport. We understand the challenges of the aviation sector, but definitely when it comes to the road transport, we are closest to the solution. But this is not going to happen overnight and not within 1 year. We need to be determined and move forward. And to end my presentation, we shouldn't be concentrating only on the change of motors, engines. This is the dominating topic in our conversation, but we should be talking about the changes of mobility habits overall. We need to be supporting the railway transport, we need to be expanding the public transport with micro-mobility, for example, bikes. And what about the sharing economy? What about renting the cars per minute? Shared mobility. That's more difficult when it comes to cars, but it is working very well when it comes to scooters and bicycles. This vision sounds convincing, doesn't it? I'm quite skeptical when it comes to road freight transport, when it comes to electrification. But as you say, we need to be consistent and persistent in what we do. From the very beginning, I knew that 50 minutes was not going to be enough to cover this topic. I'm well known for my performance ideas, so just stand up, everybody, please, dear panelists, and thank our audience with a round of applause. So let's take a bow and we will give the floor to our host. Thank you very much. I would like to thank the moderator, the panelists, and a short announcement on my part. We are going to have a lunch break, but afterwards, be reminded that we are going to have two parallel sessions. So depending on what you feel like doing, we are going to have the aviation debate, Skyroom, second floor, and it's going to be moderated by Michał Kudła from the Transport Economics Association. And here at the Machine Hall, we are going to have the maritime debate moderated by Dominik Landa from the port of Gdańsk. So, depending on what you prefer, be it aviation or maritime, just pick your conference room. And I would like to wish a nice lunch break also to those who are with us online. And I'll tell you later on how to connect to the second panel if you are with us online. Thank you very much.